The alien ship drifted through space like a wounded bird. Its beautiful crystal hull, once shining with rainbow colors, now showed ugly black scars from enemy weapons. Inside the ship, Commander Veltar held onto his chair as another blast shook everything around him. "More damage on level 7, called out Navigator Kesserin. Her voice shook with fear she tried to hide. The emergency shields are holding, but they won't last much longer. Around the bridge, other crew members worked at broken control panels. Their skin glowed with patterns that showed how scared they were. The Zephyrians had never been warriors. They were scientists, artists, and teachers. They built things and created beauty. They had never learned how to fight. 3 enormous enemy ships circled them like hungry sharks. The Korath Empire ships were dark and brutal, built only for war. Their weapons were charging up for what everyone knew would be the final attack. The refugee ship carried 50,000 Zephyrians, the last of their entire race. Their home planet had been dying for years. The star that warmed their world was getting old and sick, so they had built this great ship to find a new home among the stars. But the Korath Empire had found them first. The Korath were known throughout the galaxy as cruel conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. They had already wiped out 6 other peaceful races. Now they wanted to add the Zephyrians to their list. "Commander," said Kesserin, looking at her instruments, "they're getting ready to fire again. Our shields won't survive another attack like that." Veltar closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he saw the children in the lower levels of the ship. They had never seen war before today. They had been excited about finding a new world to call home. Now they were about to die in the cold darkness of space. "Send out the distress signal again," he ordered. "Maybe someone will hear us." But deep in his heart, Veltar knew it was hopeless. They were far from any major trade routes. No Galactic Federation ships patrolled this empty region of space. The Korath had chosen their attack location well. Many light years away, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his warship. The USS Valiant was a human destroyer, built for speed and fighting. Morrison was a career military man who had spent 20 years protecting Earth's interests in space. The Valiant had just finished a routine patrol when Lieutenant Katie Bell picked up something strange on her instruments. "Captain, I'm getting a distress signal. It's weak, but it's definitely there." Morrison walked over to look at her screen. "What kind of signal?" "Unknown language, sir, but the universal translator is working on it." She paused, listening to her earpiece. "Sir, it's a civilian ship under attack. They're asking for immediate help." Morrison studied the tactical display that appeared on the main screen. He could see 3 large ships surrounding a smaller one. The smaller ship's energy readings were getting weaker by the minute. "How far away are they?" he asked. "About 2 hours at maximum speed, sir," Morrison thought quickly. His ship carried a crew of 200 good men and women. The enemy ships were each twice the size of his destroyer. Any smart military officer would call for backup and wait for help to arrive. But Morrison looked at those fading energy readings and thought about the people on that dying ship. He had joined the military to protect innocent lives. That was what mattered most to him. "All hands to battle stations," he announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. We have civilians under attack and we're going to help them." Lieutenant Bell looked surprised. "Sir, shouldn't we call for backup first?" Morrison was already giving orders to his navigation officer. "Set course for those coordinates, maximum speed." "But Captain," Bell said, "there are 3 of them and only 1 of us." Morrison sat down in his command chair and buckled the safety straps. Sometimes being outnumbered just means you have to be smarter and fight harder. Besides, those are civilians out there. We took an oath to protect people who can't protect themselves. The Valiant's engines roared to life, pushing the ship toward the battle at incredible speed. In engineering, Commander Amy Rodriguez watched her instruments carefully. She had been pushing the ship's new fusion drive harder than the designers recommended, but she knew the captain was right. Lives were at stake. Back on the Zephyrian ship, the situation was getting worse. Warlord Grixton, commander of the Korath attack force, was getting impatient. He wanted to finish this quickly and report back to his superiors. Prepare for final attack, he ordered from his flagship. Target their main power core. I want this over fast. The 3 Korath ships moved into position. Their massive guns began to glow with deadly energy. On the refugee ship, parents held their children close and whispered prayers to gods who seemed very far away. Commander Veltar made one last try. Korath ships, we are civilians carrying no weapons. We offer no threat to your empire. Please let us pass. Warlord Grixton laughed. Your people will make good slaves. Your ship will provide useful metal for our war fleet. Prepare to be boarded. The Korath weapons reached full charge. The alien warriors were ready to fire when something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open nearby, and a ship appeared where nothing had been before. The human destroyer dropped out of hyperspace like a lightning bolt. It was smaller than any of the Korath ships, but it moved with deadly grace. Warning. Alarms immediately started screaming on all 3 enemy ships. Unknown vessel, Grixton snarled into his communicator. You will leave this area immediately or be destroyed. Captain Morrison's voice came back clear and strong. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Alliance Navy. You will stop your attack on that civilian ship right now. Leave this system immediately. Grixton studied his tactical display. The new ship was fast and seemed to be armed, but it was still just 1 ship against 3. Foolish aliens, you will die with them. Morrison smiled grimly as his weapons officer reported all systems ready. We'll see about that. All ships, this is Valiant. We're going in. The human ship charged toward the battle, ready to fight against impossible odds to save people they had never met. In the darkness of space, hope had arrived just when it seemed lost forever. The human ship hit the Korath formation like a thunderbolt. Captain Morrison had planned his attack perfectly. The Valiant appeared right between the enemy ships and the damaged refugee vessel, forcing the aliens to be careful with their shots. Target the nearest ship, Morrison ordered. All weapons fire at will. Lieutenant Katie Bell worked her controls with quick, steady hands. The Valiant's missile launchers opened up, sending a stream of quantum torpedoes toward the closest Korath dreadnought. The human weapons were designed to punch through heavy armor, and they did their job well. The first enemy ship rocked under the attack. Its shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impact, but they were already weakening. Warlord Grixton cursed as damage reports flooded his bridge. What kind of weapons are these? He demanded. Return fire. Destroy that ship, now. But the human destroyer was already moving. Commander Amy Rodriguez in engineering had pushed the fusion drive past all safety limits. The Valiant danced between the enemy plasma beams like a fighter instead of a warship. Chief Petty Officer Carlos Martinez coordinated the missile batteries. With the skill of someone who had been in space combat for 15 years, he knew exactly when to fire and when to hold back. His weapons found weak spots in the Korath shields that the enemy didn't even know existed. On the Zephyrian ship, Commander Veltar watched the battle with amazement. Who are these beings? He whispered to Kesserin. I have never seen anyone fight like this. The human ship was much smaller than any of the Korath vessels, but it fought with incredible intelligence. Instead of trying to overpower the enemy, it used speed and precision. Every shot was aimed at exactly the right place. Every movement was calculated to avoid the worst of the return fire. Sir, Kesserin said, reading her instruments, the human ship is taking damage, but they're still protecting us. They're using their own ship as a shield. Veltar felt something he had not experienced in months. Hope. These strange aliens had appeared from nowhere to help people they had never met. They were risking their lives for refugees from a race they didn't even know. The first Korath dreadnought shields finally collapsed under the constant human attack. Morrison saw his chance and took it. All remaining missiles target their power core, fire everything we have. A full spread of armor-piercing torpedoes raced across space. The Korath ship tried to turn away, but it was too late. The human weapons struck the enemy power core with devastating effect. The explosion lit up the darkness for thousands of miles in every direction. When the light faded, one of the 3 Korath ships was gone. Debris scattered through space where a mighty dreadnought had been just seconds before. But the victory came at a heavy cost. The Valiant had been hit many times during the attack. Smoke filled several sections of the ship. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the corridors. "Damage report," Morrison called out. Lieutenant Commander Pete Davis from Engineering spoke, over the communication system. His voice was calm despite the bad news. "Main power is down to 60%. We have hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Forward missile tubes are offline." Dr. Lisa Park's voice came from the medical bay. "Captain, I have 12 wounded crew members down here. Nothing too serious yet, but we need to end this fight soon." Morrison looked at his tactical display. 2 enemy ships were still out there, and both were turning toward his damaged destroyer. The Korath had learned to respect human weapons, but they still had the advantage of numbers and firepower. "Sir," Katie Bell reported, "the aliens are trying to contact us. The refugees, I mean. They want to help." Morrison was surprised. These people were facing death themselves, but they wanted to help their rescuers. "Put them through." Commander Veltar's voice came over the speakers. His words were translated by the ship's computer, but the emotion was clear in any language. "Human ship, we offer you our shield technology. We cannot fight, but we can protect." Morrison had never heard of sharing defensive systems between different species during battle. It should have been impossible. But his communications officer was already working with the Zephyrian technicians, and somehow they were making it work. "Shield harmonics are integrating," Bell reported with excitement. "Sir, they're boosting our defensive power by 40%. The cooperation worked both ways. Human tactical computers were much better than anything the Zephyrians had. Morrison shared targeting data with the refugee ship, helping them avoid the worst of the enemy fire. But the 2 remaining Korath ships were adapting to the new situation. They began concentrating their fire on specific frequencies, trying to break through the combined human-alien defenses. "They're learning our patterns," Bell warned. "Shield strength is dropping fast." In the engineering section, Amy Rodriguez and her team performed miracles. They rerouted power from life support systems to keep the weapons working. They sealed hull breaches with whatever materials they could find. They kept the ship fighting when it should have been dead in space. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, "I can give you one more full weapon salvo. After that, we'll be running on. Emergency power only." Morrison studied his options. The 2 enemy ships were closing in for the kill. His weapons were almost exhausted. His shields were failing. In a few minutes, both the human ship and the refugee vessel would be destroyed. But Morrison had not given up. He thought about the children on the Zephyrian ship. He thought about his own crew who had followed him into this hopeless battle without question. He thought about what it meant to be human, to stand up for what was right, even when the odds were impossible. "Plot a collision course with the lead enemy ship," he ordered. "All remaining power to forward weapons." His bridge crew looked at him with understanding. They knew what he was planning. If they were going to die, they would take at least one more enemy ship with them. "Katie, send a message to Earth Command," Morrison said quietly. "Tell them we found something worth fighting for out here." The Valiant began its final charge toward the nearest Korath dreadnought. The human ship's engines glowed white-hot as every bit of power was pushed into one last attack. But just as Morrison was about to give the order to fire, space itself began to change behind them. Reality seemed to bend and twist, and new ships started appearing where nothing had been before. The cavalry was coming, and they were coming fast. The Valiant limped through space with smoke pouring from several holes in its hull. Captain Morrison gripped his command chair as another enemy blast shook the ship. Warning lights flashed red everywhere, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. "Hull breach on deck 4, reported Ensign Tony Clark from his communication station. His young face was pale, but his voice stayed steady. "Emergency teams are sealing it now." Dr. Lisa Park worked frantically in the medical bay. Wounded crew members lay on beds while she moved between them, checking injuries and giving medicine. Every time the ship shook from enemy fire, she had to steady herself to keep working. "How many wounded now, Doctor?" Morrison asked over the communication system. 18, Captain, nothing fatal yet, but we're running low on medical supplies. And if we take many more hits like that last one..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew the ship was barely holding together. Morrison looked at his tactical display. The two remaining Korath ships were moving closer, preparing for the final attack. His weapons were almost out of ammunition. His shields were failing. In a few minutes it would all be over. That's when something unexpected happened. Ensign Clark looked up from his station with surprise on his face. "Captain, I'm getting a transmission from the refugee ship. They want to share their shield technology with us." Morrison was amazed. These people were about to die, but they were trying to help the humans who had come to rescue them. "Can we make it work?" Lieutenant Katie Bell was already working with her instruments. "I think so, sir. Their energy systems are different from ours, but the basic principles are the same. If we link our defensive grids together..." It took only a few minutes to make the connection. Suddenly, both ships were protected by a single, stronger shield system. The next Korath attack hit the combined barrier and bounced off harmlessly. On the Zephyrian ship, Commander Veltar felt hope growing in his chest. Working together, we might actually survive this. But Warlord Grixtown was not about to be defeated by two damaged ships. He studied the new shield pattern on his screens and quickly found its weakness. "Concentrate all fire on frequency band 7, he ordered his gunners. "That's where their combined shields are weakest." The Korath ships began firing together, focusing all their weapons on one small section of the defensive barrier. The energy buildup was enormous. Both Morrison and Veltar watched their shield strength drop rapidly. "The combined shields are failing," Bell reported. "We've got maybe 2 more minutes before they break through completely." In the engineering section, Commander Amy Rodriguez and her team worked desperately to keep the ship running. They had already used every trick they knew. Power cables were rerouted through the kitchen. Spare parts from the gym equipment were used to fix broken systems. "Captain," Rodriguez called over the communicator, "I can give you 1 more full weapon salvo, but after that we'll be completely out of power. Even life support will shut down." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment and thought about his options. He could try to run, but the Korath ships were faster and would catch them easily. He could surrender, but he knew what the Korath Empire did to prisoners, or he could make one last attack and hope for a miracle. "All remaining power to the forward weapons," he ordered. "Plot a direct course for the lead enemy ship." His crew understood immediately what he was planning. Chief Martinez looked up from his weapons console. "Sir, that's a suicide run." "Maybe," Morrison said. "But we're not going down without a fight, and maybe we can take one of them with us." The Valiant turned toward the nearest Korath dreadnought and began to accelerate. Every bit of power from the engines, the life support, even the lights was fed into the forward momentum. The human ship became like a guided missile aimed directly at the enemy. Warlord Grixtown saw what was happening and laughed. "Foolish humans. They think one small ship can damage a dreadnought in a collision. All weapons, destroy them before they reach us." Both Korath ships opened fire on the charging human destroyer. Plasma beams and missile explosions lit up the EUR space around the Valiant. The ship's remaining shields collapsed immediately, but Morrison kept the ship moving forward. "All hands, brace for impact. It's been an honor serving with you." Dr. Park strapped down her patients and held on to the medical bay walls. In engineering, Rodriguez and her team grabbed whatever they could find for support. Throughout the ship, 200 brave men and women prepared to die fighting for people they had never met. The distance to the enemy ship dropped rapidly. 5 miles. 3 miles. 1 mile. That's when space itself seemed to tear open behind them. A hole appeared, in reality, and through it came the most beautiful sight Morrison had ever seen. 6 human destroyers and 2 heavy cruisers emerged from hyperspace in perfect battle formation. Their weapons were already charged and ready to fire. "This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the Earth Alliance Navy," a strong female voice announced over all communication channels. "Korath vessels, you will cease your attack immediately and withdraw from this system." Morrison felt tears of relief in his eyes. "Admiral Stone, this is Captain Morrison. We have civilians under attack and need immediate assistance. We can... See that, Captain? Good work holding them off. Now let us finish the job." The fresh human ship spread out in attack formation. The two Korath dreadnoughts suddenly found themselves facing 8 human warships instead of 1 damaged destroyer. Warlord Grixton realized he had made a terrible mistake. These humans didn't just fight as individuals, they fought as a coordinated fleet. Their tactics were more advanced than anything the Korath had seen before. All ships retreat immediately, he ordered his remaining vessels. But Admiral Stone was not about to let war criminals escape. Negative, Korath ships. You attacked civilians. You will surrender or be destroyed. The two Korath dreadnoughts tried to run, but they were surrounded. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable than the heavy alien vessels. Escape was impossible. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. Human weapons, designed for ship-to-ship combat, were devastatingly effective against the Korath vessels. The enemy shields failed one by one. Within an hour, both remaining Korath ships were either destroyed or surrendering. The threat was over. Morrison slumped in his command chair, exhausted but alive. His crew had performed miracles, and help had arrived just in time. The Zephyrian refugees were safe, but he knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that humans were willing to fight impossible odds to protect innocent lives, and that knowledge would change everything. The space around the battle suddenly filled with new ships. Admiral Rebecca Stone led her task force through the dimensional gateway with perfect timing. 8 human warships appeared in formation, their weapons already locked onto the Korath positions. Admiral Stone was a veteran commander who had spent 30 years in space. She had fought pirates, explored unknown systems, and negotiated with alien governments. But when she received Morrison's distress call, she knew this was different. This was about protecting innocent lives. All ships, battle stations, she commanded, from the bridge of her flagship, the heavy cruiser Liberty. We have civilians under attack and one of our own ships in trouble. The human fleet spread out in a complex attack pattern that the Korath had never seen before. Each ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. The humans fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating their movements with deadly precision. Commander, Helen Wright stood at the weapons station on the Liberty. She had been Admiral Stone's tactical officer for 5 years, and she knew how to make the big guns sing. Admiral, all weapons are ready. Target locks confirmed on both enemy ships. Fire at will, Commander. The Liberty's main batteries opened, up with a sound like thunder. Each shot was aimed at a specific weak point in the Korath shields. Wright had studied alien ship designs for years, and she knew exactly where to hit them. Captain Morrison watched from his damaged bridge as the cavalry arrived. The Valiant was barely holding together, but his crew was still fighting. Lieutenant Katie Bell coordinated targeting data with the new arrivals, sharing everything they had learned about Korath tactics. Admiral Stone, Morrison called over the radio. The lead enemy ship has enhanced armor around their power core, but their shield generators are exposed on the port side. Understood, Captain. Well done holding them off. Now let us finish this. The 2 remaining Korath dreadnoughts suddenly found themselves facing impossible odds. Warlord Grixton looked at his tactical display with growing horror. 8 human ships surrounded his 2 vessels, and they were all moving with perfect coordination. How is this possible, he demanded. No species fights like this, they move like they share one mind. But that was exactly the secret of human naval tactics. Years of training had taught them to work together as a single unit. Each captain knew what the others were thinking. Each weapons officer could predict where their targets would be. Lieutenant Commander Pete Davis aboard the destroyer Thunder was the first to score a major hit. His quantum torpedoes punched through the weakened shields of the second Korath dreadnought, causing massive explosions throughout the enemy ship. Direct hit on target 2, he reported with satisfaction. Their main weapons are offline. The Korath ships tried to fight back, but they were designed for attacking defenseless civilians, not for battle against trained military forces. Their weapons were powerful but slow. Their shields were strong but inflexible. The human ships, on the other hand, were built for this kind of fighting. They moved like dancers, always staying just out of reach of the enemy guns. When they did take hits, their advanced armor absorbed most of the damage. Commander Amy Rodriguez, still working frantically in the Valiant's engineering section, watched the battle on her screens with amazement. "I've never seen anything like this," she told. Her crew. Look how they move together. Dr. Lisa Park was also watching while she treated the wounded. "It's like watching a symphony," she said. "Every ship knows its part." The second Korath dreadnought was the first to fall. Concentrated fire from 3 human destroyers overwhelmed its defenses. The enemy ship began to break apart, its crew abandoning ship in small escape pods. Warlord Grixton realized his situation was hopeless. His flagship was taking heavy damage from the human heavy cruiser. His weapons could barely scratch the enemy shields. His own shields were failing rapidly, but Grixton was too proud to surrender. "All remaining power to weapons," he ordered. "If we're going to die, we'll take some of them with us." The Korath flagship made one last desperate attack, firing everything it had at the closest human ship. But Captain Lisa Turner of the Destroyer Ranger was ready for it. Her ship danced away from the plasma beams like they were moving in slow motion. "Is that the best you can do?" Turner called out over the radio, making her crew laugh despite the danger. Admiral Stone watched the enemy flagship's final moments with professional interest. The Korath were brave fighters, she had to admit, but they lacked the flexibility and teamwork that made human forces so effective. "Commander Wright, end this," she ordered. The Liberty's main guns fired one last devastating volley. The shots hit the Korath flagship's power core with surgical precision. The explosion was visible for thousands of miles, lighting up the darkness of space like a new star. When the light faded, the Korath fleet was gone. Debris scattered through space where 3 mighty dreadnoughts had been just hours before. The threat to the Zephyrian refugees was over, but Admiral Stone's work was not finished. She opened a communication channel to all ships, both human and alien. "This is Admiral Stone to all vessels. The immediate threat has been eliminated. We're going to help repair the damaged ships and escort the refugees to safety." Commander Veltar's voice came back over the radio, filled with emotion. "Admiral Stone, we cannot thank you enough. Your people have saved our entire race." "That's what we do, Commander," Stone replied simply. "Nobody should have to face extinction alone." The human fleet moved into protective formation around the damaged Zephyrian ship. Engineering teams began transferring to both the Starweaver and the Valiant to help with repairs. Captain Morrison finally allowed himself to relax. His ship was badly damaged, but his crew was alive. The refugees were safe, and humanity had made new friends among the stars. But more importantly, word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would learn that humans were willing to fight against impossible odds to protect the innocent. They would learn that Earth's children honored their commitments and kept their promises. Some aliens would see this as weakness, a species that cared more about strangers than about their own interests, but others would see it as strength, a people who could be trusted to do what was right even when it was dangerous. Admiral Stone looked out at the stars and thought about the future. This was just the beginning. There were other species out there who needed help, other bullies who needed to be stopped, other innocents who needed protection, and humanity would be ready. Because that's what humans did. They stood up for what was right, no matter what the cost. The rescue fleet began the long journey back to human space, carrying with them the seeds of a new alliance that would change the galaxy forever. 3 days after the battle, the damaged ships moved slowly through space toward human territory. The Starweaver flew in the center of the formation, protected by 8 human warships. Repair crews from both species worked together to fix the damage from the fight. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood in the main conference room of her flagship, waiting to meet the Zephyrian leadership. She had dealt with many alien species during her career, but this was different. These people had lost everything and were now completely dependent on human kindness. The doors opened, and Commander Veltar entered with 3 other Zephyrians. Stone was struck by how graceful they looked, even after everything they had been through. Their skin still showed the stress patterns from the battle, but their movements were elegant and peaceful. "Admiral Stone," Veltar said, bowing in the Zephyrian way, "we are honored to meet the leader of our rescuers." Stone returned the bow, having studied Zephyrian customs during the trip. "Commander Veltar, the honor is ours. Your people showed remarkable courage during the battle. Veltar's skin flickered with patterns that the human translator identified as humility and gratitude. We did nothing but survive, Admiral. Your people did the fighting. Survival is sometimes the hardest thing of all, Stone replied. Please, sit down. We have much to discuss. The meeting lasted for several hours. Veltar explained how his people had fled their dying world, carrying with them the accumulated knowledge of their entire civilization. They had libraries of scientific discoveries, artistic masterpieces, and philosophical works that represented thousands of years of Zephyrian culture. We have no weapons to offer you, Veltar admitted. We have never been warriors, but we have knowledge that might be useful. Stone leaned forward with interest. What kind of knowledge? Our scientists developed new ways to manipulate energy and matter. Our engineers learned how to build things that last for centuries. Our artists created works that speak to the soul itself. Admiral Stone realized she was looking at an incredible opportunity. The Zephyrians were not just refugees. They were teachers who could help humanity grow in ways they had never imagined. Commander, I want to make you an offer. Earth has many colonies that need skilled workers and teachers. We would be honored to have your people settle in our space. Veltar's skin patterns showed surprise and hope. You would do this, even though we can offer nothing in return right now? You're offering more than you know, Stone said with a smile. Besides, that's what friends do for each other. Meanwhile, on the damaged destroyer Valiant, Captain Morrison was getting his first look at Zephyrian technology. The aliens had sent over a team of engineers to help with repairs, and they were showing the humans things that seemed impossible. Watch this, said Zeph engineer Colvin, holding a piece of broken metal. He placed his hands on it and concentrated. The metal began to flow like liquid, reshaping itself back into its original form. Chief Martinez watched with his mouth open. How did you do that? We learned long ago how to work with matter at the molecular level, Colvin explained. For us, repair is more like healing than building. Dr. Lisa Park was having similar revelations in the medical bay. Zephyrian healers were teaching her techniques that could help people recover from injuries much faster than normal. Your methods are so different from ours, she told healer Silara. We use machines and chemicals. You work with energy and natural healing. Both ways have value, Silara replied gently. Perhaps together we can find new ways that are better than either alone. As the ships traveled toward human space, crews from both species learned from each other. Human tactical officers shared their knowledge of space combat. Zephyrian scientists explained their discoveries about energy manipulation. Human doctors learned new healing techniques. Zephyrian engineers marveled at human manufacturing methods, but the most important changes were happening in the hearts and minds of both peoples. The humans were learning that not all aliens were threats to be feared. The Zephyrians were discovering that not all powerful species were conquerors like the Korath. Lieutenant Katie Bell spent hours talking with Navigator Kesserin about star charts and navigation techniques. Despite their different backgrounds, they found they had much in common. Both loved exploring the unknown. Both believed in helping others. Your people are so different from what we expected, Kesserin admitted one day. The Korath taught us that all military species were cruel and selfish. Bell shook her head. Some are, but not all. Humans learned long ago that we're stronger when we work together instead of fighting each other. The news of the battle was already spreading throughout the galaxy. Quantum communication networks carried the story to hundreds of worlds. The peaceful Aldorians heard about humans who fought to protect strangers. The merchant Viridians learned about a species that kept its promises. The scholarly Centaurians read about people who valued knowledge and learning, but the Korath Empire was also taking notice. In their dark capital city, military leaders met to discuss this new threat to their expansion plans. 3 dreadnoughts destroyed by a handful of human ships, General Thakmor reported grimly. Our forces were completely outmatched. Supreme, Leader Vextar studied the battle reports with growing anger. How is this possible? No species has ever defeated us so easily. The humans fight differently, Thakmor explained. They coordinate their movements like they share a single mind. Their weapons are precise instead of powerful, and they seem to care more about protecting others than about winning glory. Vextar slammed his fist on the table. Weakness. This caring for others will be their downfall. But some of the younger Korath officers were not so sure. They had seen the recordings of the battle. They had watched human ships dance between enemy weapons while protecting a defenseless refugee vessel. They had witnessed tactics and courage that impressed even their warrior hearts. As the human Zephyrian fleet approached Earth space, Admiral Stone received a message from Earth Command. The government wanted to hold a formal ceremony to welcome the refugees and celebrate the successful rescue mission. But Stone had a different idea. Commander Veltar, how would your people feel about settling on one of our frontier worlds, somewhere they could build a new home from the ground up? Veltar considered the offer carefully. We would be honored, Admiral, but are you sure your people would accept us? I'm sure, Stone said confidently. Humans have always been at our best when we're helping others achieve their dreams. The world they chose was called Haven, a beautiful planet with vast oceans and green continents. It had been explored by humans but never colonized. Now it would become the new home for the Zephyrian people. As the ships entered orbit around Haven, both species looked down at the planet with hope and excitement. The Zephyrians saw a chance to rebuild their civilization. The humans saw the beginning of a partnership that could benefit everyone. Captain Morrison stood on his repaired bridge and watched the alien ships beginning their descent to the planet's surface. His crew had been changed by their experience. They had learned that fighting was sometimes necessary, but helping others was always worthwhile. Dr. Park was already making plans to establish a joint medical research center. Chief Martinez wanted to learn more about Zephyrian engineering techniques. Lieutenant Bell was excited about exploring the galaxy with their new allies, but perhaps the most important change was in the message that humanity was sending to the rest of the galaxy. They were saying that strength should be used to protect the weak, that advanced technology should benefit everyone, that the universe was big enough for all species to find their place among the stars. And in the years that followed, other species would remember the day when humans stepped out of the blackness to save the Zephyrians. They would remember that when darkness fell and hope seemed lost, there were people willing to fight for strangers. That memory would inspire others to stand up against bullies. It would encourage cooperation between different species. It would help build a galaxy where might did not always make right. Commander Veltar stood in his new home and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling the spaceways, ready to answer the call of anyone in need. His people were safe, not because they were strong, but because they had found friends who believed in doing what was right. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of predators and conquerors, but it was also full of hope because humans had proven that someone would always be willing to step out of the darkness to help those who could not help themselves. And that made all the difference in the universe.